The decision was made far from any human sky. In a wide chamber filled with cold light and silent screens, the Interstellar Council watched images of a violent world spin slowly in the air. The planet was marked as a Class 15. It had crushing gravity, poisonous air, endless storms, and life that killed without warning. No known species had ever survived more than a few hours on its surface. The Council wanted to learn more, but no member race wished to risk their own people. After long debate, they chose humans. Humans were new to the galactic stage. They were curious, stubborn, and strangely calm in danger. Many council members saw them as useful but fragile. Some saw them as bold but reckless. Most believed they would fail quickly and that their failure would provide important data. The humans were told that this mission was a test of endurance and science. In truth, it was a silent experiment with very low expectations of success. On a gray morning at a distant launch site, the human team prepared to depart. The sky above Earth was pale and the air was still. Captain Jason Cole stood near the steel ramp of the transport ship and looked at his crew. They were calm, though each face carried quiet tension. Jason was in his late 30s with short brown hair and steady eyes. He had led difficult missions before, but never one like this. Lisa Morgan adjusted the straps of her gear and checked her tools one more time. She was an engineer with sharp focus and soft words. Studied a tablet full of planetary data, his brow tight with thought. Brooks paced slowly, testing the weight of his pack, always alert. Amy Carter spoke in a low voice with the medical team, calm and careful, as if her tone could bring peace to the unknown. They knew little about the world they were going to. The report described constant electrical storms, strong winds, sharp temperature drops, and living creatures with armor-like skin and burning fluids. They were told that the ground itself could shift without warning, and that the air carried toxins that could enter the lungs in minutes. Even so, none of them refused. None asked to be replaced. Jason gave a short briefing. He spoke in clear and simple terms. He reminded them that they were not there to fight the planet but to learn from it. He asked them to work slow, think smart, and keep each other alive. His voice was steady, and that strength spread through the group. The transport ship lifted from the ground with a deep roar and cut through the clouds. Earth faded below, blue and gentle. Hours turned into days as they crossed silent space. During the journey, the crew trained, checked equipment, and tried to rest. They laughed sometimes, but the tension always returned. Each window view showed only dark space and distant stars. When the ship finally entered the system, the view changed fast. The planet below was dark and restless. Thick clouds swirled around its surface. Bright lines of lightning split the storms again and again. The scanners showed powerful pressure systems and strange energy spikes rising from deep within the crust. Jason watched the data stream in silence. He felt the weight of the moment but did not show fear. He ordered a slow descent. The hull of the ship began to shake as it pushed into the planet's atmosphere. Heat flared across the outer panels. The crew held tight as wind and sound crashed around them. Lisa gripped her seat as the ship rocked. Amy checked the oxygen levels again and again, whispered notes into a recorder describing every change, stared out through a thick glass panel and watched the sky burn with pale blue lightning. The ship slammed down onto rough ground and slid several meters before stopping. A heavy silence filled the cabin. Then the outside sounds returned. Wind howled like a living thing. The ground shook below their feet. Jason stood first. He unbuckled his harness and gave a slow nod. One by one, the others followed. They moved through the narrow passage and reached the main door. The sensors showed mixed air quality but within temporary safe range. Jason ordered the outer hatch to open. The door lowered with a deep metal groan. A wave of alien air rushed in. It was sharp and bitter. The smell was strange, like wet stone mixed with burnt metal. The sky above was a dull red and gray, with dark clouds rolling in layers. Strange plants covered parts of the uneven ground, thick and twisted, with hard surfaces that reflected light. stepped down first and placed his boot on the soil. It was firm but cracked. He scanned the area with careful eyes. No movement was visible, yet the air felt tense, as if hiding unseen danger. Jason followed, then the rest of the team. They stood together, the first humans to ever touch this world. Above them, unseen drones watched and recorded. Alien observers whispered in quiet tones. They expected fear. They expected chaos. They expected the humans to collapse or run back into the ship. Instead, the humans began to work. Jason ordered the perimeter be marked. Lisa deployed small ground anchors while took soil samples. Amy set up an emergency medical zone inside the ship, preparing for quick response. Moved carefully around the edge of the landing zone, mapping the terrain and noting any strange activity. Thunder cracked in the distance. A flash of white light filled the sky. The air pressure shifted, making every breath heavy. Still, the team remained steady. They spoke only when needed, their words calm and precise. Hours passed as they built a temporary shelter near the ship. Panels unfolded and locked into place. Filters activated to clean the air within. Simple lights glowed against the dark world outside. The first human base on the stood in quiet defiance against the storm. Suddenly, the ground vibrated harder than before. A deep rumble rolled through the soil, raised a hand and signaled for silence. From beyond a cluster of jagged rocks, a massive shape began to move. It was low to the ground, wide and covered in layered scales that glistened with moisture. Its eyes glowed a dull yellow. The creature let out a slow sound, not a scream, not a roar, but something heavy and warning. Jason watched it carefully. He did not raise a weapon. He simply stood still. The creature stepped forward, then paused. Rain began to fall, thick drops that sizzled as they touched metal. Wind pulled at the edges of the shelter fabric. Still, both sides remained frozen in silent study. After a long moment, the creature turned away and vanished into the uneven land. A quiet breath left the team without anyone noticing they had been holding it. Lisa muttered a soft comment about the size of it, recorded everything he could remember. Amy checked each person for signs of stress or exposure. Jason nodded once, as if accepting the message the world had sent. Night came fast. The sky grew dark and heavy. Strange sounds echoed across the plains. Some were distant, some close. Inside the base, the crew sat in a tight circle, sharing simple food and warm drinks. Jason looked at each of them. He saw tired faces, but also strength. He knew the council thought they were already doomed. He knew the drones above were waiting for their failure. But as the storm raged outside and the ground trembled below, he understood one thing clearly. They were not leaving, not today, not easily. And though, for the first time in its violent history, had met a species that did not bow to fear. Morning came slowly on them, but it did not bring peace. The sky turned a dull shade of orange mixed with gray, and the wind never stopped. It only changed its voice from low and deep to sharp and biting. Inside the base, the humans woke one by one, stiff and tired but alive. Jason was the first to move. He checked the readings on the main panel and frowned. The outside temperature had dropped far below safe levels during the night. The air pressure had shifted again, and the toxin level had risen slightly. Still, the filters were holding. He walked over to, who was already sitting up and adjusting his boots. Lisa was checking her tools and was staring at soil samples as if they might speak. Amy moved quietly among them, scanning their vital signs, her face calm but focused. Jason gave simple instructions for the day. He wanted the perimeter widened and the soil tested deeper. He also wanted fresh data on the creatures that moved near their base during the night. Would lead the outside survey. Lisa and would support him with equipment. Amy would stay close, ready if anything went wrong. They suited up in heavy gear and stepped into the harsh air. Cold struck their bodies at once, biting through the layers. The sky growled again and distant flashes lit the horizon. Still, they moved forward. led the way, placing markers in the ground while scanning in wide arcs. Every few steps he paused, watching the land for small movements or hidden shapes. The world felt alive, as if it watched them in return. Lisa worked on setting up a small mobile generator. It hummed softly as she connected it to a new filter unit. Knelt beside the cracked soil, carefully extracting samples and placing them into sealed containers. As they explored farther, the ground began to change. The hard surface softened into dark, damp earth. Strange vine-like plants rose from shallow pits, their surfaces smooth and slightly warm. Some twitched gently when touched by the wind. Studied them with open curiosity. He noticed that the plants leaned slightly away from the base, as if avoiding an unseen disturbance. He made careful notes, speaking quietly into his recorder. Suddenly froze. He raised his hand again, signaling for silence. A soft, wet sound came from behind a cluster of jagged stone. The same type of creature from the night before slowly emerged, along with two smaller ones. Their eyes reflected the pale light, and their bodies shifted with slow power. Jason was not with them this time, but remembered his calm stance. He lowered his weapon and stood still. Lisa and followed his lead. The creatures sniffed the air and stepped closer, then stopped just beyond the markers. For a tense moment, nothing moved. Then one of the smaller creatures made a short clicking sound and turned away. The others followed, disappearing into the uneven terrain. Let out a slow breath. He realized the planet might not respond only with violence. It reacted to presence, to movement, to intent. They returned to the base hours later with new data and tired limbs. Jason listened as they explained what they saw. He nodded, absorbing every word. He understood that survival here was not about force. It was about reading the world. As the day passed, the weather grew more unstable. Dark clouds rolled overhead, and the wind began to carry fine particles of ash. The base vibrated from distant impacts, and the sky lit up with constant streaks of light. Inside, the humans reinforced the structure. Lisa sealed weak points and added extra support beams, adjusted the sensors to track deeper vibrations. Amy prepared for worst-case injuries, though she hoped she would not need to use half her supplies. Then, without warning, the storm hit harder than before. The wind screamed, pushing against the walls. The ground shook in waves. Pieces of debris slammed into the outer panels. The lights flickered once, then steadied. Jason stood at the center of the base, watching the systems respond. He felt the pressure but did not show it. He spoke when needed, steady and clear. His voice kept the others focused. Outside, the land seemed to twist under the power of the sky. Deep cracks formed and closed again. The air filled with static and dust. Yet the base stood firm, holding against the wrath of the... Above it all, unseen drones recorded every second. The alien watchers were silent now. Many expected the storm to end the mission, but the humans did not break. They adjusted and endured. When the storm finally eased, the world looked different. Shattered stone littered the ground, and new ridges rose where flat land had been. The sky cleared just enough to show a fading glow near the horizon. Jason ordered a slow inspection, and Lisa stepped outside again, careful but alert. The air was still dangerous, but the filters allowed brief exposure. Followed, driven by the need to understand what the storm had changed. They found new plant growth already pushing through broken soil. Thick spores drifted through the air, glowing faintly. It was a world that rebuilt itself fast, sometimes in ways that felt almost aware. Bent down and watched a thin root wrap around a small stone. It tightened slowly, then stopped. He had the sudden thought that this planet was not chaos. It was a system, harsh but alive. That night inside the base, the crew shared quiet words. They spoke of home, of familiar blue skies and soft rain. They joked about real coffee and warm showers. The laughter was soft but real. Jason watched them and felt a strange peace. He knew the danger was far from over, but he also knew they were adapting, step by step, not fighting the planet but listening to it. Outside, the shifted again, restless and ancient. And inside their small shelter, the humans rested, preparing for whatever tomorrow would bring, unaware that this world was already beginning to test them in deeper ways than they could imagine. The next cycle on the began with an uneasy calm. The sky was clearer than usual, showing faint streaks of pale color beyond the heavy clouds. The wind slowed, but it did not stop. It only whispered now, as if the planet itself was waiting. Inside the base, Jason stood over the main display panel. He watched the readings shift in slow patterns. Some numbers showed slight improvement in air quality. Others warned of new underground movement not seen before. He felt a growing sense that the world was changing its behavior. Approached him with fresh mapping data. He had walked a wide loop around the base during the early hours. He described how certain areas now had warmer ground and how the creatures kept to specific paths, as if following invisible lines. Jason listened carefully. He believed these details mattered. He believed the planet was speaking in its own way, and they needed to learn its language. He gave new orders. The team would move out farther than before. They would attempt a slow exploration toward a strange cluster that sensors marked as unusually stable. Lisa packed extra power units, carried his expanded analysis gear. Amy adjusted her medical kit and reviewed emergency response steps in quiet focus. They left the base in careful formation. Each step forward felt heavier, not only from gravity but from the awareness of distance. The ground beneath their boots shifted from cracked stone to thick, almost elastic soil. Some sections gave off faint warmth, like slow breathing under the surface. Knelt and pressed his hand close without touching. He could feel heat rising from below. He recorded the temperature and spoke softly about possible biological energy beneath the crust. Scanned the surroundings. The land was full of strange shapes, some tall and rigid, others round and low. Occasional movement flickered at the edge of sight. Not every living thing chose to reveal itself. After several hours, they reached the edge of the unusual zone. The air felt different here. It was not soft, but less harsh. The wind slowed, and the noise of the world faded into a dull murmur. At the center stood a wide hollow surrounded by smooth, dark stone. Jason knelt and touched the ground. It felt stable, solid. He nodded slowly and signaled the others to begin scans. Lisa activated ground probes. They sank deeper here with less resistance, watched the readings with disbelief. The data showed lower toxicity levels, more balanced air components, and a steady flow of thermal energy rising from below. Amy noted the team's breathing patterns. For the first time since arrival, no one coughed. A faint vibration pulsed through the ground, not violent but steady and deep. It felt almost like a heartbeat. They stood in silence, all sensing that this place mattered. As if to confirm their thought, a low rumble echoed from the far side of the hollow. From a shadowed ridge, several large creatures appeared. These were not the same as before. Their bodies were longer and smoother, with deep lines along their sides that glowed faintly in the dim light. Tense but did not aim his weapon, Jason raised an open hand, slow and steady. He stepped forward by a single pace, his posture calm. The lead creature tilted its head slightly. Its eyes reflected a soft pale light. It did not charge, it did not bare its teeth, it simply watched. The moment stretched, long and silent. Then the creature lowered its body to the ground as if resting. The others followed. Whispered in awe, he had never seen dominance shown through peace. Jason took another slow step forward. He felt a subtle change in the air, warmer and lighter. He spoke quietly, though no one expected the creature to understand. He said they meant no harm. He said they came to learn, not destroy. The wind shifted. A soft sound rose from the creatures, not aggressive but low and deep, like a steady echo moving through stone. For reasons none of them could fully explain, the tension faded. The team relaxed slightly, though they remained careful. They left the zone with new respect, carrying data that changed everything they thought they knew. There was not only danger, it was balance, harsh but structured. Back at the base, spent hours reviewing the readings. He explained his findings to Jason and the others. Beneath the surface, there was a vast network of living systems. The storms, the creatures, the shifting land, all were linked. The planet was not trying to kill, it was maintaining itself. Jason absorbed this in silence. He realized that to survive here, they had to fit into the rhythm, not fight against it. Changes began immediately. Lisa adjusted the base systems to follow natural pressure changes instead of resisting them. The structure flexed slightly during tremors instead of holding rigid. Amy altered breathing filters to sync with toxin flow cycles, mapped movement paths that matched creature travel lines. Slowly, the base became part of the landscape instead of an enemy of it. Days passed. The humans moved with new awareness. They walked softer, louder at times, matching the rhythm of the world. The creatures no longer approached with clear threat. Some even paused at a distance, watching with quiet curiosity. One evening, as soft light filtered through the storm clouds, Jason stood outside the base alone for a moment. He watched the horizon shift and felt the deep hum under his boots. He did not feel like an invader. He felt like a listener. Above, the drones continued to observe. The alien viewers had grown quiet, confused by the change. The humans were not failing. They were evolving their behavior to match the planet. This was not expected. This was not logical to them. Inside spoke of deeper exploration into the stable zone. He believed they could establish a secondary outpost there. Lisa agreed and began designing modular units that could adapt to the surface movement. Amy prepared protocols for long-term living conditions. Jason approved the plan. He trusted their instincts. He trusted the quiet signals of the world itself. The next exploration pushed deeper into the heart of the stable region. What they found there changed their understanding again. They discovered patterns in the stone that hinted at natural design, not random fracture. Channels that guided heat and pressure. Pathways that allowed creatures to travel safely during violent storms. This world had structure. It was brutal, but it was also intelligent in its own silent way. That night, as they returned to the base, rain began to fall again. But this time it did not feel hostile. It fell in slow, heavy drops, feeding the ground. The plants responded, unfolding slightly and releasing faint light. Jason looked back once toward the hollow. He saw the large creatures resting along the edges, calm and watchful. There was no fear in their stance, only awareness. When the humans rested, the base lights dimmed, and the quiet hum of machines mixed with the deeper vibration below. Sleep came easier than before. They had not softened. It had simply begun to understand them. And the humans, in turn, had begun to understand it too. Time continued to move on them, but it no longer felt like a battle for the humans. It felt like a slow and careful walk beside something powerful and old. The base stood strong, shaped now not only by human design, but by the natural rhythm of the planet itself. Jason watched the sun rise from the edge of the shelter. The sky shifted through shades of dull gold and soft gray. The wind moved in calm waves. He could feel the deep pulse under the ground, steady and constant. It no longer made him tense. It made him feel aware. The others began to wake. Lisa checked the power flow and smiled at the steady output, reviewed his latest data with a look of quiet excitement, prepared for another long-range walk, moving slowly and with care. Amy watched over them all, her calm presence stronger than any shield. They were not just surviving now, they were living. Jason gathered the team and spoke in a quiet voice. He told them the time had come to send a full report to the Interstellar Council, not just raw data but the truth of what they had learned. He wanted the council to understand that this world was not simply a place of death. It was a system, a balance, a living structure that demanded respect. Prepared the transmission files. The message included visual records, environmental scans, and a full summary of their discoveries. Jason recorded his voice carefully, simple and clear. He said the planet was dangerous, yes, but it was not mindless. It reacted to force and relaxed to patience. He explained how the humans had chosen to adapt instead of fight, and how the world had answered in its own silent way. Far away, the council received the signal. They watched in quiet disbelief as images filled their screens. Humans walking beside massive native creatures. Humans building structures that moved with the ground instead of breaking against it. Humans breathing air once marked as impossible. Their silence was not approval, it was confusion. What they expected was ruin. What they saw was growth. Back on the surface, the team continued their work. They expanded the base with new sections that blended into the terrain. The stable zone became a center point for deeper study. Plants that once looked hostile now showed patterns of response and care. Amy noted how the team's health improved. Their bodies slowly adjusted to the world's strange pressure and air cycles. Minor illnesses faded. Strength increased. Even sleep became more natural. Noticed that certain creatures now walked near them without threat. They moved with slow steps, aware but calm. It was as if an unspoken understanding had formed. One late cycle, as soft light filtered across the land, Jason walked toward the hollow alone. He stood where the largest creature first rested weeks before. The ground hummed with low warmth. He closed his eyes for a moment and listened to every sound, every movement, every breath of the world. He did not feel fear. He felt connection. A distant shape appeared on the ridge. The large creature returned, the same one that first bowed its head. It did not rush. It simply approached and stopped several meters away. Its eyes studied him. Its body stayed low and still. Jason did not move. He placed one hand slowly on the ground and waited. The creature made a soft sound, deep and steady. The vibration carried through the soil, through his feet, through his chest. It was not a threat. It felt like recognition. He understood then that they had accepted their presence. When he returned to the base, the others saw the change in his eyes. He did not speak of it in detail, only said that the planet no longer saw them as strangers. The following days brought new strength to their purpose. They worked not as invaders, but as part of the world's slow story. Created a map of natural energy flows. Lisa designed tools that adjusted to the planet's pulse. Guided safe zones based on creature paths. Amy recorded how the environment shaped human instincts in gentle ways. Then came the unexpected event. A new ship entered orbit above the. Unlike the human transport, this one carried alien officials. They had come in person to witness what they refused to believe from a distance. Their craft descended carefully, landing near the human base. When the ramp lowered, tall figures stepped out in protective suits, their movements stiff and slow. Their eyes studied everything with unease and wonder. They saw the shelters built in harmony with the land. They saw the stable zone glowing softly in the distance. They saw distant creatures moving without hostility. Jason stepped forward to greet them. He did not bow. He did not challenge. He simply stood as a representative of his people. Through translators, the officials asked how this was possible, how humans had not only survived but settled. Jason answered in simple words. He said humans grew strong by learning, not conquering. He said they listened when others tried to dominate. He said they did not tame the world. They walked beside it. The officials observed the team closely. They watched guide a group through marked safe paths. They watched Lisa adjust the base structure during a mild tremor. They watched show samples of living stone and responsive plant life. They watched Amy care for a crew member exposed to strain with calm patience. None of it matched their expectations. The council members spoke among themselves in low tones. Their voices carried surprise, concern, and something new: respect. One of them asked if the humans would leave. Jason looked across the land and then back at them. He said that leaving was not the goal, understanding was. He said this world deserved more than fear. The officials returned to their ship with heavy thoughts. They could no longer call this place a simple. It had become a living example of human will and patience. Weeks passed. The human settlement grew stronger. New systems were built. New methods of shared survival formed. They became a training ground, a research haven, and a symbol of human adaptability. Jason sent one final message to Earth, calm and steady. He told them that fear could be transformed into knowledge, that even the most hostile places held space for life when approached with respect. On the surface, the world continued its slow cycle of storms and silence. The great creatures moved across the land, no longer enemies but quiet neighbors. The ground pulsed, steady and ancient. Inside the base, the humans rested after another long day. They shared simple meals and soft laughter. They spoke of what this world had taught them. Jason looked out toward the horizon one last time that cycle. The sky darkened gently. The wind whispered across the stone. He did not see ya. He saw a world that tested courage and rewarded understanding. And far beyond the storms and ancient soil, the galaxy had begun to realize a simple truth. Humans were not sent here to die. They were sent here to change what survival meant forever.